I always wondered about that. Like, do they account for the number of creatures multiplying in some way, the
Yeah.
encounter level?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Generally speaking, it is harder to deal with groups of enemies than single powerful enemies.
So, Alex, I have been continuing my attempt of playing every Souls-like imaginable badly, and in that quest, I stumbled upon Hellpoint. Things were going okay until I reached a certain trope that video games often pull out, which drove me nuts. Do you know what it was?
Souls likes.
Well, I mean, it is a Souls-like, so obviously that was the first warning sign. But no, so it introduced one of those dual boss battles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was that Smough and the other dude kind of thing from Dark Souls, but it was the Ascended Attendants, I want to say they were. And the way that this boss battle is supposed to be implemented is that you can get into it from several different angles, but it's this relatively small arena. There's a couple, like, raised blocks that you theoretically could hide behind if the hit detection didn't just pass through them entirely. And you have these two enemies that have a shared health bar. One of them has this big staff weapon and will, like, shoot off projectiles at you that just will, like, kill you in 3 shots. And then there's another one that has, like, this mystical chain, and it will, like, run at you and try to smack you with it in a combination as many times as possible. So you have the one that tries more long-range weapons, and then you have the one that tries more melee weapons.
Okay.
But they both have magical powers, and they'll both fire stuff at you continuously, and they will probably kill you off very quickly.
Good.
Yeah. This is not the first time that I have had to deal with a dual boss battle, but it probably was the most frustrating. And it got me to thinking why these are so damn annoying.
Because you have to juggle 2 powerful enemies in one arena.
Exactly. This is where the big challenge comes when a game presents you with it.
I remember Devil May Cry 3 had Agni and Rudra.
Oh, yeah.
Which are 2 headless giant-looking things, each wielding a sword. One of wind and one of fire.
Oh, well, that's fun.
Yes, and Agni and Rudra were actually the swords. And once you defeated the bosses, you got to keep the swords, and they were talking swords, and Dante told them to stop talking.
What I think is interesting is that, in similar fashion to that boss battle, when they do the dual boss battles, either the bosses will have some kind of, like, relationship to each other, like it's always famous that they'll be, like, twins or something, or they worked together, and they're friends from work, or whatever. But they're usually... They also have 2 kind of, like, different skill sets. And because they have 2 different skill sets, you have to try and deal with 2 different styles of fighting at the same time as well. Which is always annoying. Either one is fast and one just hits hard, or one just has a lot of life and the other one is a glass cannon. Whatever it happens to be, you have to now think at the same time about 2 different strategies to deal with 2 different enemies. And it's incredibly, incredibly annoying. But it got me to thinking about how you might, because we're sadistic, like how you would implement this if we were doing, like, a campaign, like a role-playing campaign. Obviously, you have a party. Your party is already essentially for the monsters in the world a dual boss battle, but there's like 5 of you. But you can set up something similar for your
that's just a multiple creature encounter.
Yeah, a multiple creature encounter, but like if we did that for like the end bosses, like the big bosses at the end, but we have 2 of them. That would be pretty cool.
I mean, that's pretty standard though for like
roleplay
for tabletop. Yeah. I mean, maybe not necessarily having one big bad guy, but multiple encounter type.
Oh, okay.
You know, like, oh, maybe you've got a really good frontline warrior and then a spellcaster, but the difference there is that you're still outnumbering, in that case, the boss 5 to 1.
I think to myself about an encounter I had in one campaign where there were a lot of different kinds of enemies that were on there. There were orcs, and there were wolves, and there was one fell dragon. And the fell dragon was obviously the set piece. That's the big main campaign. But what if we just didn't have the orcs, and we didn't have anything like that, but we had the 2 fell dragons, and
they need to be smaller fell dragons.
No, they don't. They'll be the same size.
No.
Why?
Okay, so how encounter levels work in like D&D is that if you want to have an encounter that's like not just overpowered, they have to be multiple but like smaller challenge rating.
Okay.
So if you have 2 encounter level like CR9 fell dragons, that equates to something much more powerful than like a CR9. It becomes like a CR14.
Oh.
Like encounter level.
Oh, okay.
But if you have like CR9 fell dragon and then like 5 or 6 orcs, it's a different encounter level too.
Oh, okay. I always wondered about that. Like, do they account for the number of creatures multiplying in some way, the encounter level? Oh, okay.
Generally speaking, it is harder to deal with groups of enemies than single powerful enemies.
Oh, I always knew that. Like, there was a rule that if you wanted to make your party feel powerful, give them 1 powerful enemy to fight. If you wanted to make them feel vulnerable, give them a lot of very weak enemies to fight. Because it's the number of attacks that everybody can do.
Yeah, but adding 2 very powerful monsters is still a little bit overkill.
Right. Although, I will say this. If you do give your party a ton of small monsters to fight, and any one of them knows the sleep spell, they're not actually fighting that many monsters. I think that the main key, though, is that if you're going to have, like, 2 monsters and something, I'd really like them to have a good lore, like an interaction between the 2 of them. Like, either you have brothers or you have rivals. Like, if I'm fighting 2 dragons, I want the 2 of them to have, like, a history, a relationship to each other. They don't just happen to be in the same place. They like, know each other.
Right.
Yet, like, one of them is angry at the other one because they keep moving the coffee maker. Like, I need them to have backstory for these 2 creatures. And that will actually just add to the fun of, like, who are you even targeting first? I go into a room and there's 2 ogres there, and one has a club and one has a mace, and they're sitting there arguing about, like, you know, the real ogres of Hollywood that they watched last night, and you know, which one of the real ogres do they like the most, that keeps it real. And then you walk in on them and you have to fight them because they're, you know, still ogres that are, you know, keeping you from your destination. But now I gotta actually start thinking about this. Like, can I turn them against each other? Can I get in on this conversation? Is this like one of those I always lie and I always tell the truth scenarios, where now I have to
lie?
Yeah, exactly. I am going to have to figure this out. The upshot is, I stopped playing Hellpoint after that.
There you go.
If anyone out there has encountered dual monsters in the game, please let me know. What kind of relationship do you want your twin monsters to have? Is it contentious? Is it funny? Are you just going to try to have them fight each other?